Hi, welcome to Microdosing Mindfulness, a monthly workshop on Nectara, a platform for psychedelic support. I'm joined today by my best friend, David Gomes. He's a mindfulness teacher, and he's a beautiful person, and he has a wonderful shirt on right now and some beautiful dogs. I first met David around, say, 7 years ago, just by pure chance, and ever since then, he's been a beautiful friend and a beautiful mentor, and I've learned a lot from him. And so I'm really happy to have him today to teach us a little bit about mindfulness. David, you want to do a little intro on who you are?
Yeah, I'll do that intro a little bit later in the slide. I'll just follow
Okay.
follow the order of the
Follow
slide.
the order. That's very mindful of you.
So, welcome and thank you for that lovely introduction. Before we begin, let's just start with a prayer for peace. You can just close your eyes. Peace fills my body. Peace fills my heart and dwells within my love. Peace within, without, everywhere. Infinite peace surrounds my life and permeates all the moments of my existence. Peace unto myself, peace unto my family, peace unto my nation, peace unto my world, peace unto my cosmos. Om, peace. So, today we're going to talk about this course that we have created at Nectara, this journey called You Are the Medicine. And it's a journey that takes place over 21 days. And there are 7 kind of paths that we meander down on this journey. So what we're going to do today is just have a kind of a gentle exploration of what microdosing mindfulness kind of means. And so we're working with our own minds. And I actually thought this was kind of a funny definition of the mind. It's a noun. Like an internet browser, 22 tabs are open. My keyboard is frozen, and I don't know where the music is coming from.
That happened to me yesterday. Actually, I had music in one of my browsers, and I couldn't for the life of me find it, and it drove me a little bit crazy. David, how do I fix that?
Well, maybe don't have so many tabs open at the same time. That's why we've kind of created this course. And at Nectara, they have a beautiful saying that every day is a ceremony. And mindfulness is in essence what that means, that we can turn our ordinary lives into something sacred and sort of learn to work with our mind in a new way. And so we're going to do that right now. We're going to put our body and our mind into a more relaxed state. And actually that's easier than you think. It requires a sort of a slight manipulation of the breath. And so I call this breath rescue remedy, because you can use it whenever you're feeling anxious or upset or you need to calm down. And today we're going to do it with a breathing bubble, so it's going to guide us through the breath. But really what it is an exhalation that's sort of twice as long as the inhalation. We're only going to do it for about a minute, but this is a breath you can come to again and again. So the price of having dogs, you got to let them in and out. This is a breath you can always come to. We'll use it today with the breathing bubble, but you can just use it on your own. All you have to do is make sure that your exhalation is much longer than your inhalation. So just follow along with the breathing bubble and see how this feels. Now, just close your eyes. And just for a minute or so, we're just going to rest in the natural awareness of this moment. Nowhere to go, nothing to do, nobody to be. Just tune in to the peace that this moment can be for you and enjoy it. Just let your breath be natural. Just forget about your breath now. All right. So that's kind of, a little example of what mindfulness can be, right? It's just taking a few moments to check in, breathe in a conscious way.
I feel like 30% more relaxed, David. I really do. I feel much calmer than I did earlier. Thank you.
Yeah, it's wonderful, isn't it? Because you really do realize you are the medicine, and that's one of the byproducts, if you're willing to practice. And so, this is just a little inquiry for you on your own journey, is to sort of think about a place in your life where you'd like to become more mindful, right? We all have places where we can show up and be quite mindful, and other places where we don't. And then that sort of dovetails into, how does your curiosity about mindfulness relate to your exploration of psychedelics, wherever that may be? What are your thoughts on that, Pascal?
Well, for me, I feel like the psychedelic journey, a lot of it is around typically around expansion of consciousness and transformation and new paradigms. And a lot of that energy can feel really outwardly, like you're opening up to new things. And for me, mindfulness is around coming back to the opposite, the counterbalance of that, which is the present moment, the body, and navigating or having the tools to navigate the psychedelic experience in a more grounded way, which can be difficult sometimes because of that transformational external experience can really pull you into different things, right? So mindfulness to me is like the coming back, and it's the pendulum to me, or the counterbalance to the peak experience. It's around the present moment being the ceremony. So that's what it means to me in relationship to my psychedelic medicine use.
Yeah, I think you're right. That's exactly that feels right. This idea of this pendulum between the peak experience and then bringing, this new knowing, as I call it, into the world. So, yeah, I think that's one of the values of finding tools that can help you navigate through the experience. So, a little bit about me. As you can see, I like sweaters and I orange tractors. 2 hands on the wheel. I'm a good driver.
And a very handsome boy.
That's me, probably circa 1987, maybe, at my first silent retreat in Encinitas, California. So please excuse my hairdo, and B, my pants. It was
the 80s were like the 80s are forgiven, like a forgotten decades for fashion, I feel like.
Yeah. So yeah, I did some silly things, but
we all did.
It's important. I do want people to know that mindfulness is not something I picked up a few months ago. There's a lot of people talking about mindfulness in the space. This is something I've been studying and practicing because I'm a student, and meditating on and thinking about and creating ideas for integrating it into people's lives for almost my entire adult life. So it's
Mm-hmm.
something I deeply care about and I've been thinking about for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the traditional definition of mindfulness is paying attention on purpose in the present moment, non-judgmentally, which is a little too corporate for me. Um, I prefer to just describe it as a way of learning to become friendlier with the way things are so you can live more peacefully and effectively. And mindfulness can go anywhere. It doesn't take the shape of what it's watching. So we can be mindful of delightful moments and very painful moments. So it is a quality of being that can go anywhere. So this is your first gentle reminder. It's a way of traveling. There's no destination in mindfulness.
Mm-hmm.
So there are certain attributes which will allow you to practice well. First of all, you have to be curious about yourself. You have to allow for surprises, for things to occur that maybe you weren't expecting. You have to relax into the process. There's really no other way. In the wisdom traditions, we call it surrender. And you have to own it. You have to practice with your own crap, right? It's not about improving anyone else. It's about you doing your work. And so if there were medicine that went along with it, it would be patience, kindness, holistic thinking, having a sort of an ecosystem, enjoying the process, and taking lots of self-doubt dissolver, right? Which is just sort of taking moments to be kind to yourself.
Mm-hmm. I like to say that psychedelic integration is not a project of destination. It is really around the journey, and that's why every day is a ceremony. That's why it's the tagline for Nectara.
Yeah, and I think if you don't look at it this way, that's when you get into trouble, right? So you have all these expectations about what the medicine is going to do or not do for you. And of course, the medicine does what the medicine does.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's not McMindfulness, right? It's not fast, cheap, and easy sort of kind of thing, right? It's not a quick fix. I mean, if that's what you're looking for, mindfulness is probably not for you. It's also not something we can practice tomorrow. It's not a religion. Anyone can practice it, but it comes through almost all the wisdom traditions in one form or another. It's not a way of controlling your thoughts. It's just a way of changing your relationship to them. It's also not a way to become a Zen monk and ignore the future, turn out from life and, oh, everything's great. It's not that.
You mean mindfulness hasn't made your life perfect, David?
I'm so close.
So close.
No, but it's increased the spaciousness, right? So that sometimes the suffering or whatever is going on, it's not as loud anymore because you become more spacious. And I'd say it's very simple, but not easy to practice, right? So, so that's what it isn't. And there are different aspects to the practice, so I just want to go into them just very briefly. The first thing is that we're trying to be like this fellow in the middle, which is the present moment. So most of us are living in too much past or too much future. And you'll generally know if you're living in too much past because you'll feel the energy of guilt or regret or grievance, sadness, bitterness, non-forgiveness. This is the energy of the past. The energy of the future feels quite different. It's more unease or anxiety or tension or any kind of fear. These are very heavy energies, and our nervous system was not actually meant to carry all of that. Mm-hmm. So in mindfulness, we're trying to learn how to use our mind effectively so we can plan for the future. We can retrieve beautiful memories and learn things, but we want to do that wisely, skillfully. And the only moment we can do it in the present is in the present moment. So mindfulness really helps to calm the nervous system down. Foundational to the process is meditation. But mindfulness isn't meditation. Meditation is a part of the mindfulness practice, the practice of quieting the mind, interiorizing the consciousness, going within, and doing that on a regular basis. This is where all the intuitive wisdom that exists, it's in you, right? So mindful meditation and the different forms of meditation, I'd say they're probably more powerful. Well, not more. They are more powerful than any psychedelic.
Mm-hmm. And we
Uh,
have weekly meditations on Nectar on Mondays and Fridays at noon.
yeah, so that's worthwhile doing because it's always helpful to meditate together in a group. It
In
strengthens
in
us.
in microdoses, I found that to be super helpful too. Is just having like a 5 or 10 minute meditation practice on this specific day. To microdose meditation, I find that much easier.
Yeah, and ultimately we're trying to do two things in meditation. We're trying to, be still, go deep, and extend the period. But the most important thing is to develop regularity in the practice and just give it your all, like give it your best intention, right? It's a practice like everything else. People get better at it. Everyone can learn to meditate.
Mm-hmm.
Conscious breathing, as we did earlier, is a central part of mindfulness. We're learning to anchor to the breath. So in mindfulness, we talk a lot about anchoring. We're always anchoring to something. But a lot of times we're anchoring to the mind, to the restless thoughts, to the going down the rabbit hole, to working things over. So in a sense, mindfulness is driving us down into the body, into the heart, into the breath, where we can ground, become steadier and more resilient. So we can call on our breath when we need it. And the breath work you're doing, I think you've had some pretty spectacular sort of experiences. So you might speak to that.
Yeah, I mean, deeper than any plant medicine journey, and I've done a lot of plant medicine journeys. So yeah, the breath is the surfboard to ride the waves of life, what Robin Clements would say. The teacher I learned from, he explains that very well, as the breath is our surfboard. I really like that analogy.
Yeah, so this is a part of mindfulness, a foundation. Next is just learning to do. There's a Japanese artist who makes these. I love these. It's just learning to do ordinary things with deeper attention.
Mm-hmm.
This is probably the most subtle one that people miss. Because if you think about it, we spend most of our lives just doing very ordinary things. We're not, climbing a mountain every day or writing a best-selling book or, going on a ceremony every day. We're doing ordinary things. And so that's a lot of time that people are spending completely unconscious, not mindful, living in their head, living in a thought, living in the future, living in the past. And so people miss out on a lot of important things. And as a coach, I see this. I work with a lot of people in middle age, and they tell me things like, I've missed my life. I look in the mirror and I don't know who I am. I missed some of the big moments, and you can't get them back. So learning to take just even the most ordinary things and applying a little bit more attention to them is a really deep and interesting practice.
Absolutely. And I can speak a little bit about your house because I've been there multiple times, and just the level of intentionality there is in all the small little things that are present in the home. There's a very deep sense of like peace and harmony and presence and mindfulness because you approach your life that way, and it's built into the space and how you've created it. So there's a sense of like harmony that creates this harmonious energy around the space that makes life a ceremony itself.
Yeah, I think that is important. And I think it's a really beautiful way that people can improve their lives because your environment is a character in your life. It plays a big part. And so if you take care of that energy and you take care of that space, it also gives you what you need, right? So it becomes much
Mm-hmm.
easier to practice in the right environment.
Yeah.
Another piece of mindfulness is just learning to insert pauses into your day. And so I use something called the stop practice, where you just check in with yourself at some point. You stop whatever you're doing. The world will still be there. You kind of take a breath and check in with yourself, or take a few breaths. You observe what's going on around you, inside of you, in your world. At this point, you might do something nice for yourself, make a cup of tea. I snuggle with the dogs, and then I go back to my day. Well, some people think it is sort of meaningless, but actually it isn't, because you're training your consciousness. You're training it over and over again to come back to the moment. And most of us in our technology sort of speed-driven world, like, we literally live in our heads and we forget to breathe. And then the next thing you know, it's 6 o'clock. I gotta eat dinner, get to bed, get up tomorrow. And and this doesn't have to take, I'm not talking about 2 hours to go to the gym. I'm talking about like 5 minutes a day.
And we speak about that in the journey around this concept of micro retreats, which I really love, because in the psychedelic space, we kind of have this, chase for healing, or the chase for the peak experience. And we want to have the big transformation, and we want to, get these large experiences that take a lot out of us and give us a lot as well. But there's an opportunity to have micro retreats every day, and that's always available. It doesn't cost you $5,000 to go to Peru, but it's always available, and there's a certain like beauty and delightfulness in that.
Yeah, there really is. I think that's nicely put. And I think these type of things make the big retreat even better, because they become part of your preparation process. Right?
Absolutely.
At its heart, mindfulness is just a gentle awareness practice. So it's not being in your thoughts, it's observing your thoughts. So instead of sort of swimming through life, you're floating, you're having a nice kayak trip. Becoming friendlier with the moment, something I talk about a lot, that equals freedom. It's just important to realize that freedom is not the absence of suffering. It's not, you're not going to create a life without suffering. It's just developing a different relationship to it. And as Ram Dass said, it's awareness that's not trapped in attraction or aversion, or likes or dislikes. Like, if I like this, I'm happy. If I don't like this, I'm unhappy. It's, which we'll discuss later, the heart of equanimity, which is the most challenging part of the practice. It is a way of paying attention that involves less judgment. So we're nudging ourselves towards curiosity.
And I'm curious around maybe we'll touch on it later, but in the relationship to suffering, and what's the mindfulness approach to? Is it around like feeling it fully and just being present to it, and like paying attention to it, and really not pushing it back? Is that kind of the general philosophy around suffering and mindfulness?
Yeah, so that's a good question. The corollary is acceptance, right? So non-judgment and acceptance. So there's different ways to deal with it. But one thing we know is that when you resist something, it keeps it alive. So, when something happens that you don't like, some event happens, like, you can resist it and struggle against it, but the fact is it's already happened. So you're arguing with the reality of it. So now you're adding suffering onto the suffering.
Right.
So we will talk about it, but that's where suffering really is. It's actually not the event itself. It's all the stuff that you add onto it because it wasn't supposed to happen.
Yeah, it's like feel the emotions, don't become the emotion, basically.
Yeah, that's one way of doing it, for sure. There's all kinds of ways of doing it. In the yogic and Hindu traditions, we have a notion that the world is a dream, right? So we don't take dreams too seriously. We try and wear it a little looser around our lives. So a psychedelic experience often points to that. You kind of see the unreality of the material world. Something completely new opens up.
Yeah.
Now in mindfulness, some days you're going to feel like a superhero, and some days you're going to want to just take your cape and hide under it. That's okay. Like, we work with all of it. We're not trying to, it's not about like, I need to be a superhero and practice, and I need to be perfect, and I got to accept it. It's not that. It's not forcing yourself into it. It's realizing that there's space for all of this stuff, right? There's no shame in having a day off. I mean, that's sort of part of being human. we work with it and we sort of transform it, we transmute it, we take this, it's like alchemy, spiritual alchemy. We turn this clay into gold.
Yeah,
So
I've been trying to reframe discipline to devotion recently.
interesting.
And that's been really helpful for me to, understand and be okay and accept that some days I'm just not going to practice and I'm not going to do this or I'm not going to be that, so that's been really helpful. It's just being devoted to myself and my practice and my integration process. Not having a discipline or like I need to do this today or haven't reached my goals yet, I need to do it faster. So that's been a softer approach for me, and I'm learning still, but it's been helpful to just use that word instead.
Yeah, I think we have to bring there has to be a rigor to it, but a gentle rigor, right? And
Yeah.
so um, that's important. Nobody gets anywhere if they don't practice, right? I mean, if you don't practice the piano, you can't play Rachmaninoff. So we know that. But what we're trying to do is get into a rhythm where we start to actually, we don't have to motivate ourselves. we're pulled forth by our own practice. Our own practice starts to nurture.
Oh, that's interesting. Yeah, I like that concept. Mm-hmm.
So, to sum it up, as Samuel Beckett said, this is why playwrights are playwrights. You're on Earth. There's no cure for that, right? There's no cure for being a human being on Earth. You're on a ball of mud floating in an infinite universe. And you're here for a very brief time. It's very mysterious. And so mindfulness isn't going to, cure that. It's just going to help you travel through this mystery in a completely new way.
Mm-hmm.
So now we'll just get into briefly the container of mindfulness. It has a very strong container, a philosophical container. It's impermanence and change. And it's the ecosystem of the whole practice, right? And so we'll just talk about these sort of touchstones. And what we're going to do is compare the psychedelic perspective to the mindful perspective. But in a sense, they're one. We're sort of separating it out a bit, but they actually work together. So the first one is integration. We talk about that a lot at Nectara, right? What does it mean? So from a psychedelic perspective, and feel free to chime in, Pascal, integrating a peak experience can be overwhelming, right? We know that. So we go on this journey and maybe we don't know or we want to know something, and then we come back from this journey. We know something, but it's a new knowing. We know it in a different way. And the experience may contain shadow, light, it may be overwhelming, it may be blissful, but something shifts within us. And then we're left with this choice of what do we do with this new understanding? What are we going to do with it? And so sometimes it means leaving something behind, often, as we go to a new horizon. Now, in mindfulness, our course is built on this idea that you microdose integration. It's not like oh, I got it. It's not like that. It's these small, consistent, just seemingly almost unnoticeable things that just make this difference over time. You just wake up one day and you just feel different. And so this is a picture of my jeans. I'm actually wearing them. They must be 10 years old, and I just have my partner. She just keeps repairing them and patching them. Mindfulness is like the process of sewing a patch on a garment. We're reminding ourselves over and over of deeper truths, right? Impermanence, kindness, inspiration, faith, hope in ourselves, in our journey. And then the patch is sewn on so well, it actually becomes a part of the garment. It strengthens the cloth. And I think that's just a really beautiful metaphor. So every time you practice, you're sewing on this beautiful patch.
Mm-hmm. It beautifies the garment too. In this case, that's a beautiful patch. Beautiful analogy for mindfulness.
Yeah, it keeps it going, right? Because I don't want to buy a new pair of jeans. I don't want to give these pair up, and I don't need to.
Yeah.
The second part of the container is everything we're doing, we're trying to turn our mind into a friend, right? So from a psychedelic perspective, transformation, you could say, is this, it's how you renegotiate reality. based on this new experience you've had, right? It's your ongoing process of evolution. Like some of the, work you've done with ayahuasca. I mean, you've come back a different person, like your perspective has shifted. So it's like bringing a crew to your house, like a contractor, right? You want to renovate, so they got to tear everything out. Because for whatever reason, if you're doing psychedelics, there's something about you that's dissatisfied with the current reality you have,
Mm-hmm.
right? Why would anyone change their reality if they're satisfied with it? So you have to clear away all this old stuff. Oh, the foundation's still solid. Now I can build on it. So in a sense, we're always renovating ourselves, and the medicine that you take is the contractor, right? It does that work for you.
Sometimes it feels like a wrecking ball.
Exactly.
Sometimes
right?
it feels like a little new, nail in the wall, but sometimes it does feel like a wrecking ball. And that's when, I like that you, refer to the foundation, because it's always there.
Yeah. Yeah. Depends on whether it's a big renovation or a small renovation, right? But renovations are painful, because the old stuff's got to go. And, as you pull old stuff apart, you see stuff that you didn't know was there.
Mm-hmm.
From a mindful perspective, we just have an innate capacity to pay attention with kindness and warmth. It's in us.
And I think, I think the deepest of our traumas and our darkness is like, the analogy for that is like underneath the couch pillow or underneath the couch, where you've like amassed like 3 years or more of stuff, and you find things that you never thought you'd find there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Trauma is the story of having to be someone else in order to live. We can't be who we are, so we have to create someone else to live, and this creates this whole ripple effect, and you create this artificial world. Now you start to peel it back, and so from a mindful perspective, we're sort of looking at the imperfect beauty of our lives, right? You don't have to become someone else. It just requires patience, compassion, and courage. So, the next thing I think is really important that we don't talk about enough is capacity. And I thought this was a really funny cartoon. Anyone who sautés spinach, go buy 5 pounds of spinach, and then you saute it, and it's like a little lump on the plate, and it's like, what?
That's me. I'm trying to learn, like, my spinach game needs to be elevated. I'm really good with the pasta, I get the right volume, but the spinach, my capacity. I need the help, David.
It takes a lot of practice, let me tell you.
Mm-hmm.
So, but I think this is important from a psychedelic perspective, as someone once said to me. It wasn't about psychedelics, but if you're not sure you can carry it all, take 2 trips, right? So the point is, take your time. This is sacred stuff. You have to understand your own capacity if you want to journey well, and that's part of preparation and integration. And your capacity is your own capacity. So that's in your intention, in your dosage, in the medicine you work with, in the people you work with, the spaces you work in. Super important. From a mindful perspective, we're just trying to find the right tension in our lives. Not too tight, not too wound up, because then things break. Not too loose, because then absolutely nothing happens. And at different times, we will have different levels of capacity. So we're trying to get in tune with that. Next is this idea of sort of falling in love with ambiguity. And so from a psychedelic perspective, a lot of people are good at taking off in life. They can take off, like, I'm going to go do this big retreat, and I have to take off, and I'm going to change and become enlightened. But they don't know how to land. And then there's a journey between taking off and landing. And that journey generally is the journey of not knowing. It's ambiguous. Is there going to be turbulence? Is it going to be nice? So we're trying to learn how to take off and how to land and how to enjoy the process between, which means we have to embrace ambiguity. That means that if you're embracing ambiguity, you're probably doing something new in your life. It's fresh. It's new. How do you know? Because you don't know. And so you start to see uncomfortable as it can be an advantage if you realize it's adding to your body of wisdom. It really is. And so the question I would leave people with is, where do you need to embrace ambiguity in your life? Right? Everybody's got a space in their life where they don't know what's going on, or they're not sure. Where do you need more faith in your life? Where do you need more courage in your life? What little spots could use some mindful faith, some mindful courage?
Yeah, and
Often,
there's a lot that we're not aware of too, like in relation to our mind, body, and soul. And sometimes I like to talk about intention and how it's good to set your intention, but before the ceremony, let it go, knowing that and trusting that it's already in motion, and accepting that the medicine and the experience itself might have a different intention for you, and that's okay.
yeah. The divine knows what your intention, your prayer is before you ask.
Mm-hmm.
So we have to get to a place of trying to trust life more. It's the big thing. We don't trust ourselves. We don't trust life. So
Mm-hmm.
we sort of work on it, and then, this is oftentimes when things go sideways. Now we get to equanimity, which is the equality of all steps. This is the most difficult aspect of mindfulness. It's the most difficult aspect of life. So, from a psychedelic perspective, it just means there aren't any unimportant journeys. Whether you're doing a heroic dose in the rainforest somewhere of ayahuasca, or you're doing a microdose somewhere, they serve different purposes. They're valuable for different reasons. Don't separate them out, right? They work together. And from a mindful perspective, if you are willing to see every step as equal, that there aren't any unimportant steps, and if you're taking high quality steps, the best step you can take to the best of your ability, your future is bound to improve, because when your future arrives, it's going to arrive as the next step. This is a secret weapon, but it's challenging, right? Because it's hard to be even-minded when something shows up you don't like. With something serious like illness or financial loss, or relationships, or death of a family member or a loved one, or these things are hard to bring this equanimity to, right? But it's part of this impermanence and change, and we're in this, right? So there's no escape. So why even bother trying to escape? What we're trying to do is be okay with it. We're trying to find a way to be okay with it. And this is, I would say, the most challenging aspect of the practice. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So when people say, I had a bad trip or I had a bad meditation, no, you didn't. Right? It's just a perspective. How can there be a bad meditation? If you're practicing unconditional love, how can anything be bad? Right? Like, who would you be? You're a father. Like, if you gave your son everything he ever wanted at any time, spoiled him to death, who would he grow up to be? Right?
Not a very good person, I feel like.
Yeah. Right? So how do we learn unconditional love? It's these moments where we're just giving. We're giving. And this is something I learned from one of my meditation teachers, right? You give in meditation. You give, give, give. Don't ask for results. That develops unconditional love. That's the gift that you can give. Your life is your gift to the divine.
Yeah, and that speaks to the everyday as a ceremony approach, which is like the way I'm sitting right now is integration. The way I'm talking is integration. The way that we're connecting right now, even on Zoom, is integration. It's all related to the peak experiences and the journeys. And so there are, I think it's you who told me that there's a million steps in our journey, and they all need to be honored. They're all important.
Yeah, because if you separate out, oh, this is important, this isn't important, then what you're basically saying is, I just want to have a peak experience for the rest of my life. Like, only peak experiences matter. So, good luck with that. That doesn't lead to it doesn't lead to happiness in my experience. It just leads to someone who's trying to split the world into two, good stuff and bad stuff. Let's get rid of all the, whereas that, since that's not possible, we're learning how to flow with our own life and develop this resilience so that we have enough space to handle what comes our way. And we also become an anchor for other people. The next idea is this idea of experimentation, right? Your life's your laboratory. And I just love this idea that you have to find the thing that's boiling inside of you and find a way to make it meaningful, right? That's how Nectara started. You had something that was boiling inside of you, and you were trying to find a way to make it useful. Everyone's got that. So from a psychedelic perspective, your life is a laboratory, and nothing lasts forever, nothing's perfect, nothing's ever finished, right? So you go off to a special ceremony, or you go to a special place that you love, and you have this sacred experience, and then there's this kind of longing for it to go on, but it's ended, and the night sky appears, and you look at the stars, and you kind of smile. And in that moment, you open and relax. From the mindful perspective, the experiment is over. The ceremony's finished. We're deciding what the medicine has taught us, how we're going to use it, what we might do with the teachings, and then put them into some kind of a practice. So, that's why I think it's really helpful to see your life as kind of an interesting experiment, right? And this is what great scientists do. This is how they discover new things. They're willing to experiment. Developing apprentice mind is very important. The human mind is many things. It's a palace, a prison, a mystery, an ally, a playground, a sanctuary, a hamster wheel, a birthplace, a wilderness. So from a psychedelic perspective, freedom from expectations. You're just trying to understand what the medicine is trying to tell you at any given moment, right? So you have to learn to listen, not to the ego, but to the medicine, to the divine. And from a mindful perspective, you're unlearning. You're just being a beginner, right? It's an excavation, as someone once said. It's like, who are you before the world got its hands on you and shook you? This is the way it is. Because the medicine tells you differently, right? Or you have a deep meditative experience. I mean, people have all kinds of experiences in meditation that proves to them that, what they see is not necessarily real. So this beginner's mind, apprentice mind, is like being a child, right? Try and keep that childlike spirit alive inside yourself. And, as someone with a son, you know what that's like.
Yeah, constant exploration and questions and why, and never taking anything at its face value. There's always something else to discover, for sure. There's a lot more spaciousness in a little boy's mind than in a little girl's mind and little children, and we feel that as adults too when we go back to, say, a playground. Like, we get rid of the adult kind of paradigm, and we go back into the childhood element, and all of a sudden everything becomes more alive and more colorful and more playful. And so, yeah, having a child is a great way to get back into that mode a lot more, pretty much every day.
Yeah, for sure. And some of the questions they ask are just, they kind of take your mind to a new place. So that's an important part of the container of mindfulness. And finally, magic. The brilliant J.M. Barrie, who wrote Peter Pan, said, all the world is made of faith and trust and pixie dust. That's true. That is absolutely true. And from a mindful perspective, I love this word serendipity. I learned that it was coined in the middle of the 18th century by Horace Walpole. Nice name. He took it from this Persian fairy tale, The Three Princes of Serendip. So it means to find valuable and agreeable things not sought for. And so what I'd really like to leave people with is don't become numb to the magic. Um, because if I sent you back 200 years ago with your cell phone and your computer and your home with all your wonderful modern conveniences, what would you do with it? What would you do with a cell phone 200 years ago? Nothing. You couldn't hunt with it. You couldn't eat it. What would you do with your computer? Nothing. You'd be the only guy in the world with a computer because the computers weren't possible.
You'd be a magician. I mean, you could probably, use that for some sort of entertainment.
Only if you could find some place to power it up.
Right. Yeah.
So, but I think it's a reflection that many things in your life today were impossible not that long ago, which means maybe some things you think are impossible will be possible at some point in the future. And we've all experienced this force of magic in our life because the universe is always speaking to us. The divine is always talking to us. And so look around and see something else, see something more, just keep a little part of your heart open to space for the unexpected,
Mm-hmm.
for something a little unexpected. And finally, in mindfulness, we're just trying to ask ourselves beautiful questions and find beautiful practices. So a lovely question is, how can I care for myself right now, not tomorrow, not yesterday, right now? And so one of the ways I do it is I do a lot of mantra practice or affirmations, right? You can create a mantra for a day or a week and use it. And you write down your deepest intentions, you put it into a little phrase that you remember. And the words and the intention guide you as things get stormy, right? And so if you feel overwhelmed by these outside forces, you take a breath and you return to what you wrote. It's a touchstone. It's a very powerful practice. That's my experience. So thank you from Dolce Biscotti and the lovely Biscuit, who has crossed the Rainbow Bridge. And that's the link for the course. And I believe it'll be in the description in the below the YouTube video.
Yes.
And thank you for paying attention.
Yeah, thank you, David. So to continue the journey, there is the Microdosing Mindfulness journey online, also known as the Art of Medicine journey. And it's a 21-day delightful journey guided by David's beautiful radio voice, and goes deeper into each one of these concepts and offers some practical exercises and insights that you can apply into your everyday life. So it's a pleasure to have you, David, and looking forward to more mindful teachings and insights from you. And thank you very much for being a part of Nectara.
It was wonderful. Thank you.
It was wonderful as well. Take care, everyone.